Hey everyone, welcome to the Drum Club podcast, powered of course by Collision Drumsticks, the #1 drumming podcast, giving you all an access all areas pass to conversations on topics that range from drumming, mindset, entrepreneurship, the music business, and so much more. Each week, starting from today, it's our first guest. We're back. Brand new year, brand new mission. We're going to bring you exciting discussions, guys, from independent and signed artists, as well as speakers, touring and award-winning musicians, as well as industry experts. We are absolutely joined by a star today, so absolutely hold your applause. Be sure to hit the subscribe button below to keep up to date with new videos, announcements, and exclusive Drum Club content. And let us know as well. We absolutely appreciate your feedback. Drop a comment below on your thoughts about our conversation today. This week on the Drum Club podcast, we are joined by none other than drummer and Collision endorsee, Joshua Van Ness. Based in East Brunswick, New Jersey, Joshua has been drumming since the age of just 10 years old, and whose current and most recent projects include The Wag, Remember Jones, Bryan Hansen Band, Natalie Farrell, Jarod Clemons, Kaberet Kaput, so many more. Joshua is a proud Collision Drumsticks endorsee and can be found cross social media at his handle at Joshua Van Ness Music, as well as on his official website, www.joshuavanness.com. Joshua, with that being said, I need no more introduction. I think that we did a hell of a job there, but again,
that was
welcome
amazing.
to the Drum Club. Yes, I mean, honestly, it's so good to have you on. I know you and me, we go way back. We've been talking about doing this for a while now, haven't we?
Yeah, well, it's been a while since we've done something like this. It's been, I think, since, things were still COVID-y the last time we chatted like this. So I'm glad to see that the podcast has got some legs here and honored to be your first guest of the year. So thank you for having me.
Our pleasure, and huge thanks for carving out the time. I know you're a busy drummer. I had a look at your schedule literally at the start of the year. I know we're already filling in dates and things are looking good. We'll get into that in a moment. But yeah. Joshua, I know you really well, but for those drummers that are yet to maybe get to know you, can you just tell us a little bit about your journey as a drummer? Who's inspired you and what really inspired you to pick up, the drumsticks at the tender age of 10? Incredible.
Yeah, man. Well, it's funny. I grew up in a musical family. All of my uncles and my father, and I had a lot of them. I think my grandparents had 11 kids, if I'm correct. So everybody could sing and or play an instrument. And I just kind of grew up around this family that was just incredibly musical. And, family gatherings were just pretty much jam sessions at a certain point, and they really kind of schooled me in the way of, kind of like the Motown vibe and the 70s funk vibe. And I got a lot of my feel. I got a lot of my pocket from those days. Believe it or not, the guitar was the first instrument I tried to pick up, and I failed miserably. But I never lost my passion for music, and I kind of started taking spoons and pens and pencils and banging on things. And I think it was my sister who first said, he sounds pretty good. We need to get him a drum kit. So I think that happened around the age of 12, and I just really haven't looked back. I shouldn't say that. I kind of took a small break in my, I guess, late teens to my early 30s to concentrate on writing songs and being a front man and stuff like that. But I'm actually really grateful for that, because that's really shaped the drummer that I am now. So that's kind of the root story. That's kind of where it began.
Huge. I mean, musical family, jam sessions with the fam, again, incredible to hear you come from such a large family. And obviously you point throughout your career and obviously your inspirations to several family members. And I'm sure so many different drummers along the way as well. But, it's great to hear that, all of this is really a snapshot of you. All of us as drummers, we don't just point to one part of our chapter or our journey where it's like that was the defining moment, that for you it sounds like it was several different things. I mean, even when you talk about stepping away, and I know we carved out some time a few months ago to obviously talk a little bit about more kind of on the Instagram live about your interview and obviously kind of that break you had. What do you think the break that you had between your teens and your 30s from drums actually taught you, just pushing on that a little bit more, to be a better musician? What were some of the surprising things that, coming back to the kit, you thought, it really has paid for me to step away from the kit, because maybe I'm performing better in this regard, or I can see from a different angle that maybe if I was just in drums, I wouldn't have seen. What is there anything you can either point to or speak
Yeah,
to in that?
I mean, I'll try not to go too deep into the woods. I could talk about this all day. I mean, so in that time, the first thing I did was, again, I was fronting a band. My brother and I actually started a band together. My brother's a great guitarist and songwriter and just creative person. So and it's funny, he's got a bit of an unorthodox approach to his creativity that it took me a while to learn to trust, but after a while I'm like, I'm going to let him do his thing because he ends up being right in the long run. So, and in that in itself is one of the lessons, just sort of learning how to be creative with other people. But I think the most important thing, I make my living playing with groups that have vocalists, and just understanding what it's like to be a vocalist and what it's like to be a front person. And it's funny, we kind of joke about it sometimes, especially if you're talking about a front person who's not playing an instrument. Sometimes they just walk in, everything's set up for them, they go, and we joke about how easy it is. And really, they have the hardest job. If you're playing pop music, and I'll use that term pretty broadly, I mean, that can be anything from, literally Britney Spears pop to, grindcore death metal, anything where the vocalist is kind of front and center. They're selling that thing, they're whatever that vibe is, whatever that sound is, they're the ones who are selling it. And for them, what I learned during that time, not focusing on the drums so much, what I learned is that sometimes that feels like you're jumping off of a cliff and you're hoping there's a nice pool of gentle water there that you can just kind of splash into. And sometimes there's not, sometimes it's concrete that's at the bottom there. And, I think that experience in that time just taught me how to be the pool of gentle water, or the safety net, or, just to give the front person the ability to do what they need to do to sell the music.
Yeah, I think that's so powerful to hear. I mean, and I'm sure there were times where you were that gentle cushion or that gentle water for them, and maybe some of the other band members were, maybe some of them weren't along the way. Maybe kind of you were kind of charting that path for that front person, man, woman. I know you've worked and collaborated with so many different musicians along the way. It's unbelievable. I mean, it's just incredible to see the list. Like when I looked on the website, and I encourage everyone, we'll post a link to Joshua's pages below and all the links, but it blew me away as to how many people you have collaborated with over the years. So I think that's so powerful. You talk about trusting the process, and not just the process of yourself, because I think it takes a while to find your process, right? To find what works for you. And it seems like what has worked for you is really making sure, what works for the singer works for you, right? If it's good for them,
Yeah.
and, they have the job to do, and they've got the deliverables, which is be the front person, be the marketeer, be the person who's being the voice to the band, right? And I think
Right.
being that conduit for them and helping them any which way, I mean, that's so powerful, I think, to be honest. And it's not something you hear about drummers doing. I think it's quite a selfless act, really. And I'll credit you for that, because I think a lot of drummers I think we as drummers, because I obviously being a drummer too, and being an active drummer as well, I can speak to the fact that sometimes we live in our own bubble, right? Sometimes we're bringing the drum kit, we're bringing ourselves, we're bringing all the wonderful things that we as drummers bring to the table. And I think sometimes we forget that actually we're in a band setting, that we have to pick up where other members, yes, they should know their part. Yes, they should, know what to do in X, Y, and Z situation. Like when I'll give you a prime example. I was playing a gig. We had 2,500 people we were performing to literally last week. Keys went down, keys synth. Almost the whole show was like put on hold because like the keyboard player for us is also like the fix-it man, the man that puts everything together. And for him to almost have to say, guys, I'm effectively off the stage right now trying to figure out my patches, see what's going on, work with sound tech. For us, it was like, right, step up. Here's where this is the true moment. It's not about getting on stage and just performing. It's shown up in those moments as well.
Yeah.
I think trusting in that process and having those backups is so effective, so essential. And I think that's really what it means to be a musician. Can you speak to either times like that when that's happened to you, Joshua, or is there anything you want to add to that? Because I think that's just
Yeah, I
important as
mean,
well.
I'm actually really glad you brought that up, because there's the process of refining your craft and mastering your craft, and there's the process of learning material, and then there's the process of executing on that material and performing that material. But there's one thing that you really cannot prepare for, and that's when something does go sideways, when there is a mistake. And sometimes it's just as simple as somebody playing the wrong note, or the singer goes to the bridge early, or it could be a million different things. But what you do in that scenario is something that really cannot be prepared for and really cannot be taught. And it's important that you have your mindset right, because those things can happen at any time. And I'm not saying that you should be paranoid. Yeah, obviously that's the last thing you want to be. You don't want to be waiting for that shoe to drop. But when that shoe drops, you got to remember, hey, that guy might be freaking out a little bit. So I got to be the rock right now, both musically and emotionally and interpersonally. That is a huge skill, and it's something that comes with time. I think the greatest compliment I ever got, I got from a vocalist, and she said to me, I love when we work together, because I always feel cared for.
Wow.
And yeah, right. And it was validating in a couple of ways. The first is that it lets you know that you're in the right gig. Like, there's a lot of talented guys out there, and you've experienced this, where you go to a show and you're like, man, this band's happening and that drummer's happening, but I don't think he's the right guy for this gig. Like, he's pulling out his Dennis Chambers licks on a singer-songwriter here. It just doesn't work. So A, it let me know that I was in the right place doing the right thing. And B, it just kind of confirmed that, there is a little bit of experience that has allowed me to help other people feel comfortable doing what they do. And honestly, I think that's why I get so much work. There's a lot of drummers who are better than me. But being able to understand the mindset of what your other performers need is something that I take a lot of pride in, and try to bring to the table. I hope I answered your question.
You did. No, and it's absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's just a credit to you, credit to the service that you provide all of these fabulous artists and acts. I think it's just incredible. And I think that is the best compliment you could ever receive. And I think there's no better drummer to receive that compliment. And I think you absolutely, deserving of it, because that I think just says a lot about, us and our art and what we are about. I think so many drummers go for so many different things. I think we're chasing always perfectionism. We're chasing, we're going social media. We're having a look, at other drummers, and sure, like you said, you name dropping all these incredible drummers, and you think, gosh, what direction do I need to take my music in? Is it right to be the showiest of showmen and showwomen, or is it to be, just really strip it back to basics? But I do feel like there's that happy medium of being someone who's reliable, like, for starters. Like, take it even farther back. Then before you even get to the kit, make sure you're on time. Make sure if you're on time, you're late. Make sure you're turning up. Make sure you're turning up ahead of everyone else. You're beating everyone in. When people are rocking up and they need a bit of assistance with the gear at the door, help them out. When it comes to set up, prep work, I was watching Tony Robbins today while I was at the gym, just kind of preparing for this podcast. And I remember him saying something along to the effect of, it's the 99% of things we do off the stage is really the 1% that we do take to the stage is really, all the results come from the preparation, the hard work, everything we're doing offline on our own, independently and individually of the band. When we come to the gig, it's like muscle memory. So we're not putting in, the right attitude, the right kind of actions. It's like junk food, garbage in, garbage out, and you're not ever playing or performing your best. And performing, like you say, is just, it's such a universal word. It's everything from rocking up on time, making sure you're a great person to, interface with and also perform as well. So no, you have absolutely answered that, smashed that. I wanted to ask a little bit more about the impressive roster of projects and artists you work on and you work alongside. It's incredible. How on earth do you manage your time, Joshua? Because I think this is an important thing to factor in, right? You can be
Yeah.
a Back in Black gig one minute, you're with the WAG the next. I see you on social media all the time. I just think, wait, how is this guy going from Jersey to New York and the kind of beauty, like round the East Coast? And it's just happening. And then you've obviously got family, friends, all those other commitments, like life's happening for you. So yeah, how do you find that, and how do you make sure you're not just letting the bands, not just showing up for them, but showing up for everyone?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question, man. And it's something that I have to check in with constantly. And there's a few things that we can unpack there, right? Like you talked about, just the basic requirement of being available for different projects. Believe it or not, that's not easy, but it's not as hard as you might think. Often artists will work in cycles. They'll release a record or they'll be promoting something and they do 2 or 3 months on and then the rest is off. It's rare that artists are working all at the same time. Like, well, at least the artists that I'm working with, But having said that, I mean, you kind of have to be able to have some very direct and sometimes difficult conversations. And that goes back to a lot of the things that we were talking about, building a rapport, building respect, building trust, so that if I have to tell someone, look, I know you got this thing going on, but I'm committed here. Can we work something else out? And if not, you kind of have to be okay with, all right, well, this isn't the season for me with this gig. You have to be confident and comfortable enough that either another opportunity is going to come by or this opportunity will come back to you. And they do sometimes. So there's that part of it. I think the other part of it is really just balance. Balance is one of my favorite words. And if you think about it, I mean, you were in the gym today. I'm not sure what you're working on, but sometimes you do like core strength things that require balance. And you don't just get your balance and move on. Like, you are constantly working on staying balanced. And it's the same in this aspect of life when it comes to dealing with different projects or dealing with being able to have my career and be with my family. You just kind of have to pay attention to yourself, what you're feeling, and the people that you love, what they're feeling, and just make sure that balance isn't tipping too far in either direction.
Yeah.
And
Was
again,
there
it's go ahead.
just on that, if you don't mind, I wanted to ask you kind of a deeper rooted question within this, just because I really like where we're heading. And that is, was there a defining moment, that you can either kind of point to, or has it just been a slow progress towards striking this balance? Like, was there a horror moment or an enlightenment or a process where you
Yeah.
went, you know what, this isn't working. I need that balance has to come sooner rather than later, because I just know there's so many drummers who will watch this and resonate with this idea of they're running a million miles a minute. They've got
Yeah.
family banging on the door. When are we going to get time for the family to eat, to do all these other things that life brings us in terms of commitments? For you,
Yeah.
Joshua, was it one moment, one band, or was it just kind of a run up and you woke up one day and said, hey, look, it's all kind of getting to a point where it's going to reach this bubbling over. I need to get to that balance sooner rather than later.
Yeah. No, I think, well, there's definitely been some of those moments. I remember, I can't remember what year it was. Maybe it was 2019. One year I did 182 gigs, and I I'm a parent, and I'm in a committed relationship, and believe it or not, I was working a full-time job at the time. So I got to the end of that year and I'm like, what the heck am I doing? Like that was a little stupid, and I had my reasons for going hard like that, but there was that moment. I know not to do that again. There have been moments where I've been on a gig or I've been offered a gig and I've realized, you know what, this isn't worth my time, and I don't say that to, man, I shouldn't have said it like that. When I say it's not worth my time, I meant you factor in the time you're having with the people you're with, the money you're making, the amount of work that it takes to put into that gig. And then you also factor in how much time you're not with your loved ones and things like that. And, there have been moments where I've said, you know what, this gig isn't for me because of that. I felt that balance tipping too far into something that I really wasn't all that in love with. So yes, there have been specific moments, but again, balance is something that you have to constantly check in with. And what balance means to me today might not be what it meant to me last year, and might not be what it means to me in 2 months.
Yeah.
A lot of things come. Your health comes into play. If you're sensing that you're constantly run down and you're not able to perform to the best of your ability, or if you're not able to be the person that you need to be when you're not performing, that's a good sign that your balance is off, and you need to reevaluate. And this can all mean different things to different people. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to do less gigs, but something has to get checked, or we start kind of spiraling out of control. And the other part of your question, how do you manage all this stuff? It's funny, I'm not a very organized person naturally. I really have to overcompensate to stay organized. And this kind of ties into that whole conversation of balance, right? Because some people get to a point where they're so busy that they cannot stay organized.
Yeah.
I personally, and I personally don't want to accept that. Like, to me, that's, not being well organized is a character trait that I need to work on. I don't want that to be the reason why I'm not pursuing work or my goals. So I make sure that, like every day, like there's always a to-do list. I always write down things I need to do. And believe it or not, when I don't do that, I'm a mess. So as long as
who would guess, right?
Yeah, as long as I discipline myself to sort of stay on track and take stock of the things that I need to get done, and then knock them out one by one, I'm usually pretty good, and it usually leaves me clear-minded to make the decisions I need to make to maintain my balance.
That's really, really, really practical advice. And I think, even just kind of getting an understanding of where you position yourself and how you structure your, day to day, week to week, kind of time planning, mind mapping, progress, right? Because it's something that you've obviously spent the last, multiple decades working on, pursuing and perfecting. And I'm sure, like, I know you'll allow me to say this, we're still dialing it in, right? We're still tweaking it. Like you say, it's seasonal.
All the time.
And I think things like coming back to what we talked about right at the start, kind of setting expectations with the band. I think that's mission critical, or the artist, the act you're working with, to find that balance, right? Don't overpromise and then underdeliver, or kind
Absolutely.
of find that overpromise and overdeliver moment. Or there's that intersect somewhere, and it's about being honest with yourself and saying, here's what I can commit to, right? Because I think it's absolutely incredible, to have achieved what you achieved, in 2019, 180 shows. For me, it sounds like you were almost testing your limits as much as you were enjoying the gig, right? You were trying to, like,
absolutely, I was
push. You want to get to that, because I can imagine you're the type of person that will look back and go, if I hadn't done that in 2019, I would always ask myself, what could have become me as a drummer if I didn't do that, right?
Man, your insight is right on, dude. Absolutely.
And I think, but I don't think you're alone in that. I think a lot of us as drummers are in pursuit of what you were trying to achieve, and what you achieved really is incredible. And I think, you made it, but I think some drummers run the risk of burnout if they're not too careful, right? And maybe stepping away. Fortunately, you found your way back to drumming. Some people don't. And I think COVID really kind of was that defining moment for a lot of drummers, a lot of musicians. Obviously, we all went through it. Some drummers didn't come back, and that was really sad to see. But, I think the real critical thing walking away from today's conversation is balance, really. I think it just, as you say, Joshua, finding that balance, maintaining that balance, because if you find it, don't dial away from it, don't start walking back to bad
Yeah.
habits and what you were doing before. Like it's almost about just being constructive and building upon that kind of, that cadence that you start to find and get to. That's true success. And I think it's no wonder doing 180 shows, being named best drummer of 2023, by New Jersey State Magazine. I mean, firstly, what an accomplishment. So huge congratulations from me personally,
Thank
because
you.
that's awesome to hear, my man. Absolutely brilliant.
Thank
But
you.
can you just share with us, right? What does that recognition mean to you personally? Because I don't think as drummers, and I think as you, Joshua, I don't think you actually kind of take a moment to kind of check and really enjoy that moment, because I think you're always chasing that next thing. And I think it's just because you're such a humble guy and an honest guy. But honestly, that's incredible to see. And I think it's just a testament to how hard you're working and to what you're practicing and what you truly practice and what you're preaching here. But yeah, what does this mean, this recognition to you?
Well, first of all, thank you. And second of all, it's really humbling, to be honest with you. It's really humbling, and I had put out a social media post after that had been announced. By the way, it was a complete surprise to me. Like didn't see it coming at all. But I had said, I don't think I'm the best drummer in my scene. And there's a bunch of guys that, easily could have deserved that mention, and gals, and bunch of players that could have deserved that mention. And I know that they were all happy for me, which is really cool. Like, we actually have a really amazing community of drummers in my area. For those who don't know, I live in central New Jersey. A lot of my work is sort of between Asbury Park and New York City, and then I do some traveling outside of that too. But yeah, it was. I actually felt like I was accepting that honor and that recognition, like, on behalf of this community that I've become a part of, and that felt really good, because we all have each other's backs, and it's which is pretty cool, right? Like, I think a lot of the times we maybe we get a little insecure, or we feel like we're not good enough, or we think somebody's trying to take our gig, and I'm really lucky to be in a place where there's a great community of awesome drummers. So there's that. Now, having said that, I do work really hard, and it's really nice to have someone recognize that hustle, and to call you out for it. So while I accepted it very humbly, and don't know that I was truly deserving of it, I'd be lying to you if I told you it didn't feel really good.
Good man. Well, look, honestly, I'm so thrilled that you actually enjoy it and savor this moment, and really took time to post about it and acknowledge your success as well. Because I think documenting the process is so mission critical. And I think we as drummers, we're like I say, we're just caught in the rat race of just moving on to the next thing and chasing the next high. And it's like, let's just acknowledge the mountain we've just climbed and dominated. Like, you kicked ass, my man. That was absolutely awesome to see, and just huge credit. And even in that moment, like, being like getting the recognition like that by a really reputable, brand, and kind of locally and regionally, it's huge. But to say it's down to the community locally, like, it again just shows, what a community leader you are locally as well. One thing I wanted to cover before we obviously wrap up, and honestly, you are the type of drummer and friend of the brand that we could just go on and on and on. But honestly, I really do appreciate and value the time today. Every artist, Joshua, and band that you personally work with has such a unique sound and style. Okay.
Yeah.
This is a really important question to the artists at home. How do you, adapt your drumming to complement, and enhance the vocalist and the overall musical direction of each project? I wanted to leave that question for the end because it's just such an important question.
Yeah, it is an important question, and it's a question that I ask myself all the time, to be honest with you, because in some ways I feel like I'm not adapting. I feel like I'm just bringing what I bring. And then I take a step back and I see what each artist is doing, and I realize, no, there's a different flow for every artist. When I play with the WAG, I mean, the WAG is interesting because, including myself, we have 4 lead singers. And, you know, I talked about being able to support the vocalists and give them what they need. You know, all four of them need something different. But you know, sort of just being alert and aware and cognizant of what's going on at any given moment in that gig is, you know, important, and what I think I bring to the table. You know, it's funny, I'm going out to California on Thursday to go to NAMM to play a couple of shows with the Bryan Hansen Band. The Bryan Hansen Band is interesting because in some ways it's the project that I work with that I have to stretch the most for. So Bryan Hansen, his music is he calls it blue-eyed funk. Like, it's very soulful, just good music, and it's kind of influenced by John Mayer and the Dave Matthews Band and Stevie Wonder. And if you think about the three artists that I just named, you know, they're all doing pop soul music, but they all take a lot of chances, and they all you know, have moments where I need to be a little bit more aggressive, and really keep an eye towards syncopation. And you know, like, you can't fake that. Like, that's got you know, like, that's got to be, you know, we talk, you know, I say all the time I'm a feel pocket drummer, but feel pocket drummer doesn't mean you can just play tune forward, fake your way through an entire gig. Like, the Bryan Hansen Band keeps me on my toes a lot. You know, and then there's, you know, I've been working with Jarod Clemons lately. I don't know how long term of a thing that's going to be, but we've really enjoyed working with each other. And that is just like bluesy, still soulful, still funky, but bluesy. I'm trying to find appropriate words to use instead of speaking how I would just normally speak. I mean, like, there's a lot of adrenaline. Let's use that word. There's a lot of it's a forward leaning, heavy hitting, like, I can't go in there and not hit the drums hard kind of gig, you know? So, you know, that's a little different. Working with Natalie Farrell and working with Remember Jones, it's very vocalist focused. Natalie from a pop perspective, and Remember Jones even from like a theatrical perspective, actually. You know, like, for those who don't know, Remember Jones is a great artist, does original stuff, and also does these tribute shows. And I did one of his original tours almost 2 years ago. And lately I've been doing his Amy Winehouse tribute show. And he takes everything from his theater background and puts that into this concert type of presentation. And that really requires a sensitivity to dynamics, knowing when to push and pull tempos. There's a lot of different things that each gig kind of requires. And what I enjoy the most is just taking little bits from each of these gigs,
Yeah.
and learning from them and making that be my personality, you know?
Love
So
that. Yeah.
being a pocket fill guy who knows how to stretch a little bit, who's sensitive to dynamics, who can push and pull a tempo, like, that's kind of, you know, what I've become, and what those gigs have done for me.
I love that. I mean, just breaking down kind of how each artist and act influences, you know, your style, your journey. Your style's ever evolving, Joshua, and obviously you can see that
Mhm.
on display on your socials, you know, and through your
Yeah,
content. I know you're prolific with content, and you do such a great job, you know, off stage as
thank
well
you.
as on stage, you know, and you have to be. You have to be the triple
Yeah,
threat. Great individual as you are, great performer, and obviously great marketeer, and obviously your biggest champion. And I just think to hear, you know, you break down, you know, all these different artists, you know, I can't wait to hear how Bryan's gigs go at NAMM, you know,
yeah,
anyone join, you know, this will be up by time, you know, NAMM's hitting. So again, just around the corner. So be sure to try and, you know, catch up with that show. If Joshua was obviously able to give you a minute of his time, you know, give him a follow as well on his socials, and, you know, and then to obviously move through to you know, the Amy Winehouse opportunities, and, you know, the Back in Black and Back to Black shows, and and the wag, I mean, kind of four vocal. It's incredible to hear and see. And I mean, again, it just comes down to how much of a talent you are behind the kit, I think, ultimately. And I
Thank you
think,
so much.
it's one of the main reasons why, obviously, we are officially, obviously, in partnership. You're an incredible endorsee and a proud spokesperson for our brand, flying the flag, not just in East Brunswick, but everywhere you go and every show you
Yeah.
play. And it's great, really great to hear. But, as we really start to wrap up today's show, I mean, we're going to have you back. There's got to be a part two, to this. I think having you back and just breaking down some more of these, key areas, balance, I would love to go in some more depth with you on that. I think really today it's been a really great opener for us to be able to say, trust in the process, guys. Start the year off right, back yourself, have a roadmap, have a plan in mind, start to obviously build that balance in your life. Once you have that balance, part two with Joshua will be right around the corner. And don't forget, guys, be sure to follow Joshua at Joshua Van Ness Music. Don't forget as well to hit him up at joshuavanness.com as well. But Joshua, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been absolutely awesome to have you on, brother.
Thank you so much. I just want to say real quick, thank you for making my favorite drumsticks. Obviously I've been playing them exclusively for years now. And, I won't go anywhere without them. Really love it. And, just with regard to some of the things you were saying, any way I can be of help to, especially the Collision Drumsticks community, I'm always here for you. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my man. Guys, don't forget, hit subscribe. Be sure to keep up to date with everything Drum Club. And we're going to get Joshua back for a part two very, very